Hi, Miss Eglin here. Tonight I'm going to be reading two short stories that we are going to be comparing in class. And these are two science fiction stories. And when I'm reading science fiction, I like to think of the characteristics of science fiction. So obviously if something's set in the future, there's technologies that we don't yet have, time travel, anything with aliens, UFOs, anything like that is considered science fiction or sci-fi as they call it. And usually there's a theme or message like, beware of technology, how we're using it, kind of like you can't control nature, to be cautious, around things like that. So the first short story is called Zoo, and then the second one is Hey, Come On Out. And the what do you think? How can you tell when a situation may be dangerous? What clues do you look for? And the quick rate, think of two scientific inventions, something that has been a great benefit and something that has had terrible consequences. What does each reveal about human nature? That's a pretty deep question. And we have this painting here, which is kind of interesting. And it's Marguerite and the Spies, 1971. And if you don't know who Marguerite was, he was a surrealist and did these kind of images with this guy, the son of man, with this apple in front of his face, and this is not a pipe, and things like that. So again, kind of interesting that they gave us this painting to look at, and it kind of goes on forever, frame within a frame within a frame. So, think about what, if you're previewing the text, what does that tell you about the selections? Okay, and we have some vocabulary here. Interplanetary, between or among planets, awe, a feeling of fear and amazement. And then for the second selection, apparent, seeming. And proposal is a suggestion. So our literary skills are to understand science fiction, and our reading skills are to compare and contrast stories. And a little bit about the authors here. Okay, build background. Zoos have existed for a very long time. In fact, researchers believe that the first zoos were created in 4500 BC. Until recently, most animals in zoos were kept in cages. However, more zookeepers have been trying to replicate the natural habitats of their animals so that the creatures will be more comfortable. Preview the selection. Zoo introduces you to Professor Hugo, a man who keeps the strangest of species on display for earthlings to see. In Hey, Come On Out, you'll meet a group of villagers who are trying to figure out what to do about a hole that appeared in the wake of a typhoon. Read with purpose. Read this science fiction story to discover one writer's ideas about the zoos of the future. Zoo by Edward D. Hotch. The children were always good during the month of August, especially when it began to get near the 23rd. It was on this day that Professor Hugo's Interplanetary Zoo settled down for its annual 6-hour visit to the Chicago area. Before daybreak, the crowds would form, long lines of children and adults both, each one clutching his or her dollar and waiting with wonderment to see what race of strange creatures the professor had brought this year. In the past, they had sometimes been treated to 3-legged creatures from Venus, or tall, thin men from Mars, or even snake-like horrors from somewhere more distant. This year, as the great round ship settled slowly to Earth in the huge Tri-City parking area just outside Chicago, they watched with awe as the sides slowly slid up to reveal the familiar barred cages. In them were some wild breed of nightmare, small horse-like animals that moved with quick jerking motions and constantly chattered in a high-pitched tongue. The citizens of Earth clustered around as Professor Hugo's crew quickly collected the waiting dollars, and soon the good professor himself made an appearance, wearing his many rainbow-colored cape and top hat. "Peoples of Earth," he called into his microphone. The crowd's noise died down and he continued, "Peoples of Earth, this year you see a real treat for your single dollar. The little-known horse spider people of Khan, brought to you across 1,000,000 miles of space at great expense. Gather around, see them, study them, listen to them, tell your friends about them. But hurry, my ship can remain here only 6 hours." And the crowd slowly filed by, at once horrified and fascinated by these strange creatures that looked like horses but ran up the walls of the cargo like spiders. "This is certainly worth the dollar," one man remarked, hurrying away. "I'm going home to get the wife." All day long it went like that, until 10,000 people had filed by the barred cages set into the side of the spaceship. Then, as the 6-hour limit ran out, Professor Hugo once more took the microphone in hand. "We must go now, but we will return next year on this date. And if you enjoyed our zoo this year, telephone your friends in other cities about it. We will land in New York tomorrow, and next week on to London, Paris, Rome, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. Then on to other worlds." He waved farewell to them, and as the ship rose from the ground, the Earth peoples agreed that this had been the very best zoo yet. Some 2 months and 3 planets later, the silver ship of Professor Hugo settled at last onto the familiar jagged rocks of Khan, and the odd horse spider creatures filed quickly out of their cages. Professor Hugo was there to say a few parting words, and then they scurried away in 100 different directions, seeking their homes among the rocks. In one house, the she-creature was happy to see the return of her mate and offspring. She babbled a greeting in the strange tongue and hurried to embrace them. "It was a long time you were gone. Was it good?" And the he-creature nodded. "The little one enjoyed it especially. We visited 8 worlds and saw many things." The little one ran up the wall of the cave. "On the place called Earth it was the best. The creatures there wear garments over their skins, and they walk on 2 legs." "But isn't it dangerous?" asked the she-creature. "No," her mate answered. "There are bars to protect us from them. We remain right in the ship. Next time you must come with us. It is well worth the 19 comics it cost." And the little one nodded. It was the very best zoo ever. Okay, so again, there's a picture here. It says analyzing visuals. Name the elements of science fiction that are present in this illustration. So if you want to take a better look, what do you see in this setting? What does the atmosphere look like? The sky, the ground. Okay, and we will move on to the next story. And these are the questions. Okay, and this is build background. The events of Hey, Come On Out you'll take place in a fishing village in Japan. Japan boasts one of the largest fish catches in the world. However, Japanese waters are plagued by pollution and environmental problems. Read with a purpose. Read the following selection to see how villagers react to a strange and surprising discovery. Hey, Come On Out by Chinchi Hoshi. The typhoon had passed and the sky was a gorgeous blue. Even a certain village not far from the city had suffered damage. A little distance from the village and near the mountains, a small shrine had been swept away by a landslide. I wonder how long that shrine's been here. Well, in any case, it must have been here since an awfully long time ago. We've got to rebuild it right away. When the villagers exchanged views, several more of their number came over. It sure was wrecked. I think it used to be right here. Nah, looks like it was a little more over there. Just then, one of them raised his voice. Hey, what in the world is this hole? When they had all gathered, there was a hole about 1 meter in diameter. They peered in, but it was so dark nothing could be seen. However, it gave one the feeling that it was so deep it went clear through to the center of the earth. There was even one person who said, I wonder if it's a fox's hole. "Hey, come on out!" shouted a young man into the hole. There was no echo from the bottom. Next, he picked up a pebble and was about to throw it in. "You might bring down a curse on us. Lay off," warned an old man. But the younger one energetically threw the pebble in. As before, however, there was no answering response from the bottom. The villagers cut down some trees, tied them with rope, and made a fence, which they put around the hole. Then they repaired to the village. "What do you suppose we ought to do?" "Shouldn't we build the shrine up just as it was over the hole?" A day passed with no agreement. The news traveled fast, and a car from the newspaper company rushed over. In no time a scientist came out, and with an all-knowing expression on his face, he went over to the hole. Next, a bunch of gawking curiosity seekers showed up. One could also pick out here and there men of shifty glances who appeared to be concessionaires. Concerned that someone might fall into the hole, a policeman from the local substation kept a careful watch. One newspaper reporter tied a weight to the end of a long cord and lowered it into the hole. A long way down it went. The cord ran out, however, and he tried to pull it out, but it would not come back up. 2 or 3 people helped out, but when they all pulled too hard, the cord parted at the edge of the hole. Another reporter, a camera in hand, who had been watching all of this, quietly untied a stout rope that had been wound around his waist. The scientist contacted people at his laboratory and had them bring out a high-powered bullhorn, with which he was going to check out the echo from the hole's bottom. He had tried switching through various sounds, but there was no echo. The scientist was puzzled, but he could not very well give up with everyone watching him so intently. He put the bullhorn right up to the hole, turned it to its highest volume, and let it sound continuously for a long time. It was a noise that would have carried several dozen kilometers above ground. But the hole just calmly swallowed up the sound. In his own mind, the scientist was at a loss, but with a look of apparent composure, he cut off the sound, and in a manner suggesting that the whole thing had been perfectly plausible, had a perfectly plausible explanation, and said simply, "Fill it in." Safer to get rid of something one didn't understand. The onlookers, disappointed that this was all that was going to happen, prepared to disperse. Just then one of the concessionaires, having broken through the throng and come forward, made a proposal. "Let me have that hole. I'll fill it in for you." "We'd be grateful to you for filling it in," replied the mayor of the village, "but we can't very well give you the hole. We have to build a shrine there." "If it's a shrine you want, I'll build you a fine one later. Shall I make it with an attached meeting hall?" Before the mayor could answer, the people of the village all shouted out, "Really? Well, in that case, we ought to have it closer to the village. It's just an old hole. We give it to you." So it was settled, and the mayor, of course, had no objection. The concessionaire was true to his promise. It was small, but closer to the village. He did build for them a shrine with an attached meeting hall. About the time the autumn festival was held at the new shrine, the hole-filling company established by the concessionaire hung out its small shingle at a shack near the hole. The concessionaire had his cohorts mount a loud campaign in the city. "We've got a fabulously deep hole. Scientists say it's at least 5,000 meters deep, perfect for the disposal of such things as waste from nuclear reactors." Government authorities granted permission. Nuclear power plants fought for contracts. The people of the village were a bit worried about this, but they consented when it was explained that there would be absolutely no above-ground contamination for several thousand years, and that they would share in the profits. In the bargain, very shortly a magnificent road was built from the city to the village. Trucks rolled in all over the road, transporting lead boxes. Above the hole, the lids were opened, and the waste from nuclear reactors tumbled away into the hole. From the Foreign Ministry and the Defense Agency, boxes of unnecessary classified documents were brought for disposal. Officials who came to supervise the disposal held discussions on golf. The lesser functionaries, as they threw in the papers, chatted about pinball. The hole showed no signs of filling up. It was awfully deep, thought some, or else it might be very spacious at the bottom. Little by little, the hole-filling company expanded its business. Bodies of animals used in contagious disease experiments at the universities were brought out, and to these were added the unclaimed corpses of vagrants. Better than dumping all of its garbage in the ocean, went the thinking in the city, and plans were made for a long pipe to carry it to the hole. The hole gave peace of mind to the dwellers of the city. They concentrated solely on producing one thing after another. Everyone disliked thinking about the eventual consequences. People wanted only to work for production companies and sales corporations. They had no interest in becoming junk dealers. But it was thought these problems too would gradually be resolved by the hole. Young girls whose betrothals had been arranged discarded old diaries in the hole. There were also those who were inaugurating new love affairs and threw into the hole old photographs of themselves taken with former sweethearts. The police felt comforted as they used the hole to get rid of accumulations of expertly done counterfeit bills. Criminals breathed easier after throwing material evidence into the hole. Whatever one wished to discard, the hole accepted it all. The hole cleansed the city of its filth. The sea and the sky seemed to have become a bit cleaner than before. Aiming at the heavens, new buildings went on being constructed, one after the other. One day, atop the high steel frame of a new building under construction, a workman was taking a break. Above his head he heard a voice shout, "Hey, come on out!" But in the sky, to which he lifted his gaze, there was nothing at all. A clear blue sky merely spread over it. He thought it must be his imagination. Then, as he resumed his former position, from the direction where the voice had come, a small pebble skimmed by him and fell on past. The man, however, was gazing in idle reverie at the city skyline growing even more beautiful, and he failed to notice. There's a little picture of it right there. And that is the end of the story. So if you are not sure what happens, you want to go back and reread the story. And there's a question here, why are the voice and the pebble significant? So again, if you miss that, that's okay, but go back and figure it out. That is the end of the stories. Thanks for listening and have a great day.